Hello, and welcome to Insights. I'm Dave Burkhart, the host of Insights, and also our sponsor, succeedforlife.com, which provides personal and professional development. And I was on the phone last week talking to my friend Brent Peterson at Career Authority, and we were talking about this. It's not a new phenomenon, but it's really kind of raised its awareness in business across the country called quiet quitting. And we said, we should talk about this on Insights. So, as you know, Brent is the author of these two books up here, career. Creating a bolder career, and Getty's work, which is actually leadership tips as learned from him by his dog. But as we talk to Brent, you're going to find that he is very insightful with many, many years of experience in this world of business. So, Brent, let's talk.
So I've been, I don't know how you want to sort of riff on this topic, but as my work continues, debriefing and unpacking the findings of Flight Path, we get in, anytime someone's faced with a decision of whether to stay or to go, which often people are, the topics related to quiet quitting, sort of percolate up to the surface.
I just read the Gallup poll that they conducted back in June, and the results were released like the 6th of last month. And the results, they polled over 15,000, which is a relatively small sample, but it was across the United States. And their statistics show that at least 50% of employees are in a quiet quitting mode.
Wow.
Possibly more. And, I work with HR people predominantly. And I got on this discussion the other day, and I thought about you. It was a friend of mine. She's a senior VP of human resources. She's a global human resource professional, certified person. Really sharp lady. I've known her for, probably at least 15 years. And she was like, Dave, we ordinarily finish projects and move at a certain speed, and we're not doing it. And the only thing we can think of is that it's quiet quitting. People are doing the absolute bare minimum. And sometimes even below that, but it seems like every time a manager tries to address the performance issue, it gets worse. And I said, well, I'm experiencing quiet quitting as not an employee problem, but a leadership problem. Managers know how to manage, but we manage processes in a business. We lead people. They're two separate skill sets. And so I was wondering how that would tie into our conversation from the standpoint of, does the software identify, let's say for somebody in leadership, the need to be able to improve their interpersonal communication skills with employees? And from the employee side, what diagnostic or what predictor does it or can it provide?
Yeah. So I'll take the question kind of in two directions, as you served it up. So that, what's in it for the managers to experience our Flight Path Pro, which, if you haven't, if you don't know, and you may not, because it's fairly new. So we have a novel software that includes a world-class assessment that was created by Hogan. And then we incorporate experience, we incorporate a career destination, and we also add the idea that your internal values and their fit to culture matter a great deal. It actually matters a great deal to this topic, and how you build and cultivate your network. So we incorporate all that into a piece of software, which makes it novel, because a lot of career development approaches, they do a good job on one of those, but they don't really bring the holistic approach. And then we add a little coaching to it. So how does it help a manager? So the Hogan is incredibly insightful on how does the manager relate to interpersonally to people. And if they don't have a fair amount of sensitivity in terms of just, empathy and care and interest, that's immediately seen. The other is their own personal on, how confident am I in my own skin? And I can see that in one of the parameters that comes in through our diagnostic. And, people who are at the high end of the spectrum, they're Teflon. They really don't notice anything. They're just like Michael Scott on steroids. They just do what's pleasurable, and they just keep on going. And then on the other side, they're so vulnerable and scarred on their own journey of work and feedback that they really don't have much to offer employees, because they're just worried about tomorrow or today. And, and the good news is all those things can be developed. Now, you may never be world-class if you start out at a very low level, but you can get to an adequate place. And there are, tools and frameworks so that you can give somebody to start the journey and then just follow up. And, hopefully their manager and HR person is helping them, and that reinforces it. On the employee side, I'll give you more of a philosophical answer versus a technical answer. So employees, I think, should maximize their career fulfillment, as hard as that may be with management practices at your company. Why? Because a third of your life is work. And think about it. If you do something a third of your life that is demeaning, unfulfilling, disengaging, you're wrecking your brain, you're wrecking your spirit. What?
Demoralizing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a professional wants to take care of their psyche, wants to take care of their body, wants to take care of their health, right? Because you want to be able, you want to maximize, have a successful, make enough money, make enough impact, have a good enough experience that, it doesn't kill you, right, in the end, or it gives you options for, to do things that you want to do in your life. And if instead you're downtrodden and sort of, under the thumb of the man, that's not going to help you. And so my approach on career development is take agency, take ownership of your career, think of it as a business. And even if you're in a bad situation, start to plan your next move, right? And
Right.
if a lot of you are in a bad situation, yes, you make, band together, have concerted action like labor unions have done for years, and lean into management until they, make a change if there's a practice. And, I think that's where, people's mindset is going on this quiet quitting.
Right. And I know in the beginning, the software was developed for helping people develop a career path. And then, of course, our organization works on the corporate side. At least it started out on the corporate side. And I could see where it would be a huge benefit for companies to use your product to help develop a career path for their employees so that they can see they're going to be with the company long term. It gives them that sense of security and also the feeling of forward motion, where many feel like they're either stagnating or falling backward or being, missed entirely.
Yeah. I mean, just yesterday I was working with, I had a handful of Flight Path Pro debrief meetings, which is, the first step. Once you complete about a 90-minute assessment, we look at it, I look at it, and I spend some time with it. I turn on an algorithm on our software that creates a planning tool and some identification of opportunities. And then I, think about that and then have a meeting with the individual where, in an hour, they leave with, a pretty concrete next step, prioritize next step that includes all those factors that I mentioned. And in yesterday's course of doing these debriefs yesterday, twice it came up where there were some things that they could do. There were a lot of things they could do with their existing employer. And, there was a career path, job, a position in sight. There was things that they could do in their current role. They could tweak their network, mostly outside of the company, by the way. They could, by moving into the next role, they were actually going to improve the fit with their values. So there were some really interesting things inside the organization, which, I was inside an organization for 35 years. So I definitely get the importance of that from a retention standpoint. On the other hand, I think employees need to hear the truth, right? And they want the truth rather than somebody that's just trying to sell them on, staying where you are because, pat you on the head. And, if you're real good, it'll all work out, right? Well, that doesn't really work anymore. And so in one case, a person was in a role that, was going to be a harder slog for them. And I told them, I said, hey, I'm never going to talk somebody out of doing something hard. If you see it eyes wide open and you see the benefits of it and you're willing to do the work, that's great. But you realize this particular occupation is is an easier fit, is a better fit. And you might enjoy that. And they really started to look at that, and that would take them outside of this organization. And it came up with another person as well that had more of a hardcore science background, and they're playing a sales role, and it is just an execution machine. And he said, it was a sad moment. It was like, I know the right things to do to lead my team, but the pressure is so intense, and the direction from above is to do it this way, not really for mean reasons, but just for expedient reasons. He said, I'm not putting the time into the things that I know would make a longer term difference, but I just got to get to execution.
Right.
And, that again might take him out of this from a cultural fit, maybe not for the occupation, but because the culture is so, rough on his values. And everybody that I talk to about the value, culture, fit, or misfit, they get this idea that it makes you sick over time. And I saw so many people that just slogged away in corporate America, because it was profitable for wealth, but sometimes it was really at odds with their culture or their values. And they got, but by the end of their career, they were, their health had deteriorated. Yep. And some, unfortunately, didn't last long into the after the work career. So, we got to avoid that. And, that's why I think quiet quitting is a symptom that it's not the end, right? It's not the end game. It may be a really good tactic to do a couple things. One is it may be your time to think about your career and go get that next good assignment. And, people in Career Authority, using our Flight Path Pro can help, but, there are other, getting a mentor, having good conversations, objective conversations about your options. That could be a great tactic to launch your next move. The other is, if there is concerted action, you and your colleagues have talked about a management practice, there's some disrespectful or something that reasonable people would agree, hey, that's not right. They're not giving you time to take a break, or they're cheating on payment, overtime or whatever, something that's just like, not right.
Yeah.
And but you're trying to help them, right? And sometimes you have to use conflict to have a productive outcome, and concerted action, quiet quitting can do that. But I would say, and this is something Dave has said to me in previous conversations, that how important integrity is. doing quiet quitting with a degree of integrity, I think is really important. And what do we mean by that? And I'd be curious, have Dave go off on this a bit. But for me, so integrity is old fashioned, but integrity is the thing that gets you trusted in your profession or your work. So if you tell somebody you're going to do something and you pretty consistently do it, maybe always do it, then people are not going to be looking over your shoulder as much. They're not going to be, assigning work to somebody else just in case you fall down on the job, right? They're going to, you got it. I can trust you. And that builds kind of your capital. And I would say that when you quietly quit, there should be a comeback path, right? When the company responds, then being a person of integrity, then you go back and you give it your all, and until you decide to change.
Right.
I don't know, Dave, what are your thoughts?
Well, I kind of default to the fact that we have pro-labor states, we have pro-business states, right? We live in a pro-business state.
Yeah.
But I spent 30 years of my career in a pro-labor state in California, probably the most stringent one.
Mm-hmm.
And, the quiet quitting thing, of course, in our era would be, career suicide in a lot of cases, simply because we weren't working in Chicago where we had these unions where we'd get together and we'd all, decide that we were just going to walk out, and go on strike, right, or something along those lines. And the majority of the people that watch Insights are HR professionals on LinkedIn for the most part.
Yep. Yep.
And so they're trying to find a solution, from a developmental standpoint, saying, hey, look, we know that quiet quitting is the symptom of a much deeper problem. And we know that our leadership, our managers, middle management from the supervisor all the way up to, the CEO of the company, they need to reframe their relationship with their employees. It's very different than the leadership that we grew up with from, Lee Iacocca and all these other people, getting people on the bus and all this other stuff was more management. And it wasn't really leadership. And I think the first time I really encountered the difference, the epiphany, was when I was working with the first female supervisor on a manufacturing floor back in the late 80s. And the employees were super loyal to her. And there were employees from other departments that were being run by, good old boys. And people were like, hey, I want to get into her department. Well, why was that? Well, she took the time to listen to them, and she took what they had to say to heart. She was able to meet with them at a emotional level. She didn't get emotional, but she could show empathy and understanding of how they were feeling, and be able to say, hey, well, this is what I can do. I'm not the CEO, so I can't change the world. But in this department, what I can do is, and then she would explain, look, I can, if you like another job within the department, maybe we can get you trained and you can start doing that. Or, she would listen and try to brainstorm with them solutions. And for the employee, that was enough. It was like I was being heard, I was being understood. And I think that we're at that point where we need to be starting to do that, if not already doing it up and down the ladder. But where do leaders and managers get these skills?
One thing that we do with FlightPath Pro when it's a people leader is we actually take a framework of, kind of 7 things, from setting a vision, assigning work, setting priorities or respecting priorities, leading and building a team, creating the right environment. There are 7 of these pretty basic manager responsibilities. And then we unpack, or we look at each of them related to your skills, your derailers that under reaction, and what could harm your ability to do these things, and your values. And we had sort of turned a red, yellow, green light on, right? Green is you're good to go. Just realize you're really well equipped to do this. If you have some reds or yellows, here's what you can do. And so then it's about change, and a personal change for a manager can be stimulated in a number of ways, right? You can say, if it's pretty straightforward, you say, you're really missing the mark on this, and what is it? And people don't need a 2-year sabbatical to get some things. They can walk out the door, or go to the next Zoom meetings and start to be different, right? That it takes willpower and takes some direction. You also training, right? So your vast resources are incredible, and I try to do some sort of, I'd call it battlefield type training, where we may spend 15-20 minutes on a topic. It could be coaching, it could be adapting your communication style to better reach your direct reports. But there's a lot of value in having spending some quality time on training and being selective. And once you have an assessment that can sort of tell you your needs, then you can drive right at the right topics. And then thirdly is just having another framework. A lot of time when we're under stress, we don't even think anymore, right? It's just like we're in a tunnel. All I can see is one way through this thing. And the stress is creating the tunnel and the barriers. And so then we're just head down, and we're going to go at it in the old stubborn way, which probably, is not helping us from building that rapport that you described that the female operations supervisor had.
Right.
And so that takes awareness. It takes having another, challenging maybe some of your beliefs. If you believe that everybody is a little lazy, all my employees are a little lazy and they're quitting, they're going home at 4:30, and I know that they're not giving their all. Well, that that belief can permeate your attitude and your actions, and then you have to challenge your beliefs, and then you have to substitute a new coping strategy for when you're in that pressure moment. And an old this will really date me from like things I like and kind of a nerd, but so Abraham Lincoln, I love this quote. So if you would have given Abe 6 hours to chop down a tree, he will spend the first 4 hours sharpening his axe.
Right.
So think about it. If you have, a manager doesn't need 4 hours to slow down, to go faster later. But if they could just buy 5 minutes of thought, give me 5 minutes to think about this before I just go at it the same old way. And give them a framework, a new paradigm to use in that leadership moment. That's a moment of high influence that they're fixing to face. And if they can do something better in a moment of high influence, that makes a world of difference, right? Now employees are starting to feel respected. They're starting to feel, like I'm a partner in this thing versus just under the thumb of the power.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at. I mean, it's not complex, but we're in a world where things have moved. Pressure has made us forget some of this.
Right.
We're plug and play oriented. I'll bring in the hot shot. They'll perform great at the job. And then what do I do? Well, no. You need to do both, right? You need to have a plan for after they excel at that job, because they may not do that job forever. And, this idea of long-term building a relationship of integrity and trust, right? If you're a manager versus, just hit the number for the week or the quarter, and, I'll get a new person if this one disengages. That, I just don't think, first off, it can work in the short term, but, managers are people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they hang up their corporate resume, put it on the mantle, and tell their their son or daughter, what did mom or dad do for 30 years, 40 years? Well, what do you say, right? You don't want to be in that spot. And it's never too late to change. And I think if your employer, if you have enlightened HR professionals, they can be allies and sort of, just taking a little bit more effort in the area of building a leadership style of integrity, and doing some of the right things related to managing and leading others, and then results will soon follow and probably soar, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's been research that shows that a supervisor that spends 5 to 10 minutes in a meaningful conversation with each of their employees a week, which sounds like it shouldn't be too much to ask, 5 to 10 minutes, that the engagement increased exponentially. I mean, significantly. And so, we help CEOs, because it's got to be top down. Middle management has got this pressure from the top and the pressure from the bottom, and it's causing them to, like you said earlier, become ill physically, burned out, and then what do you have? You don't have much to work with there. So to be, hopefully, if it's even possible at this point, more proactive and saying, what is the role of leadership in the organization? We understand management. Management is hitting the numbers, it's working the processes. How do we inspire our employees? How do we help them see their contribution and feel valued for that contribution? I used to work for Steelcase North America, right? The office furniture manufacturer. And I was working with a group of employees that assemble the walls for the cubicles, right? We used to say that, without us, Dilbert didn't have a cartoon strip. But, I was talking to an employee. He's like, I don't know, there's nothing here to get excited about. All we do is build these things all day long. We stick them in a box and go in the back of a truck and, that's it. And I said, well, kind of to piggyback on the point that you were making, you're creating a work environment in which another human being is going to spend a third of their life in. And they kind of got it. They're like, oh, yeah, I guess it's kind of a stretch. And then, so what I did was I took them out on a field trip, and we took them to a location where we had just completed an installation, and the employees were coming in and they're like, wow, this furniture's so nice. And this one lady goes, well, I still don't have a chair that fits me. And she was sitting in this chair, her feet were dangling off the floor. She was leaning toward her desk, and the employee went over and he goes, oh, let me show you. And he showed her all these adjustments the chair was capable of doing to fit her like custom. And she had this biggest smile on her face. She said, I had no idea that we could do that.
Yeah.
When we got back, the employee said that was the most significant thing that he had experienced since he'd been with the company, was to be able to help a human being out in something that would really make a difference. And and that person historically had been negative, a resistor, probably not somebody you'd want to promote. After that experience, they were a zealot.
Well, that's what's so exciting about this leadership paradigm that we're describing, is that it's not like it's hours and days of effort, but it's small moments of really high value contributions. Then have this, they can last the rest of that person's career, or they last well into the future.
Right.
And, I think the topic you're raising about purpose to our work, and this is pervasive, right? Whether it's a manager or an employee, everybody's seeking some purpose, right? Even if they don't think about it much, they will respond to a purpose. And Now, people are different. And so the good news is that there's ways to sort of get under the hood, even if you're not clear on your values. I can see it when you go through the particular diagnostic we run. But generally, it sort of clumps up into three buckets. Some people are very economic driven. And so it's extrinsic. It's right. It's money, it's title, it's position, it's power. And that's fine. Right. So just know it. Right. So then if you as a manager can connect the dots for that person with their career path and their development, they're golden. The other, there's another big group that's very, I would say that they're related to the example you gave, where, it's our product and service does this for our customers. And if you can connect them to that and give them experiences that allow them to see it, that can be like, super valuable. And then some people, they just want to be part of a team, and they want to be, they want to be in a casual environment that's getting stuff done, and I can freely interact and share ideas and be part of it, but I don't need to be the leader of it. Right. And they're in that group is cool too. You find ways to sculpt their career and their development so that they can be parts of teams, and they can take care of the human dynamics, and they can, and get fulfilled in that way while they're pursuing and delivering great results. Because I think we have to remember, if we've forgotten or maybe learn it for the first time, that, people and work, it's sort of there's a sanctity about work, right? You gotta take care of the person. To your point about spending 5 minutes, you got to take care of the person, because they can bring magic, or they can really put a wrench in stuff.
Yeah.
And quiet quitting is they're putting a wrench in the cogs on quiet quitting, but they can also bring magic and really, use a lot of initiative.
Yeah. And I think that leaders and managers kind of lose sight of that reality, that, we can help people become more fulfilled in the work that they do. I think everybody's looking for meaningful work where, hey, great pay and a title. That's great. I love that. I'll work for a while on that.
Yep.
But after a while, I need to know that I'm making some kind of a difference within the organization or to the community at large. I want to be proud of the organization that I work for. I want to be able to boast about them, at dinner with friends, and say, gosh, you'll never know, you'll never guess what we're doing now. I think that's what really gets people excited, is being able to see the true value in the contribution, not just in the immediate, in the community.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why the work, that I'm a part of, I'm, trying to bring through the career development portal comes better management practices, sculpting a career path that engages and retains people, and, ultimately makes them more productive, as well as if they're in the wrong spot and they're in a culture that's not good for them. I mean, let's let them go. Go on to your next better thing, but go with it. Abe Lincoln, spend 4 hours sharpening your axe, thinking about where you're going before you go, so that when you get there, you're happier, right? And that's the work. And nothing would please me more than managers in HR take these kernels and these approaches and eliminate the need for people like me doing what I do.
Well, what? I actually see a proactive HR organization utilizing the services of the Career Authority to be proactive and identify where their people are at, from the management level down to the frontline level, and say, this is what we have. Let's build a strategy as a result of the data that we got. I mean, I see this as a huge tool that organizations could use to their advantage.
What we're seeing is there's kind of a sliding scale of how we're used, right? So sometimes we're the back office that's helping HR and to help their managers see what they should see, and kind of learn how to better address the career path or career development needs of an employee. The other is, we're a bolt-on to talent management where we essentially run the company's leadership development program.
Sure.
And it starts with FlightPath Pro as a assessment. We add even 360 interviews to bring color and context to the findings. By the way, they are never different than the data. So I'm a data person, right? But I also am a organizational change person. So 360 interviews just bring tons of credibility,
right?
And they bring sponsorship, because people know you're going through a journey, and it helps win them over. They're on your side because they know that you're listening to them as a client or an employee that's going through this. And then comes the coaching, and the coaching very quickly goes from what do we know, where are the opportunities, and then what can we do about it. And so then it's all about working it out. It depends on how long a company wants our help, because it can transition quicker to their manager. Within 45 days, we have a meeting with the manager, and then they really start to add reinforcement. And I have some great second level managers who they view me and I view them as just like we're partners, and the HR person knows everything that's going on. There's this nice triangle, and clients are getting promoted. Clients are there's the changes in their approach at work is being recognized, and they're getting bigger responsibilities over it. And the comment back the other day from one of these second level managers is that what the experience that you had with our two employees as they kind of rolled off after 5 months with us meant a lot to them. And I thought that was an interesting comment. It was, I would have accepted, they made a major impact, but he was relating it back to them that it meant a great deal to them. And I think that actually is, I'm sure they're making the major impact as well, but the fact that they now feel invested in, imagine, if I feel like I really had an investment from my corporation, I'm probably going to go pay that back.
Right. Absolutely.
And
so what I can see, because I work, Synergetics does, the corporate side, and Succeed for Life works on the individual side. So we're very similar in our business models. But we started corporate, and it sounds like you started, more on the labor side of things.
Yeah.
Right now, it is so important for companies to be able to identify behaviors that are going to support a value system that not only retains employees, but has their customers take notice of them. Right. I mean, mm-hmm. Apple's a perfect example of that. We're gonna give the power of the big corporations to the individual by providing them with a computer and right?
Yep.
So one of the challenges that I get bombarded with constantly with clients calling me up and saying, we know that we have adjustments to make at the vision, mission, values, roles, goals, the whole hierarchy of the structure, organizational structure. And we know that we need to do that because we're not getting the performance out of our employees. So they definitely feel disengaged, or we've got a revolving door in human resources. People are leaving the organization faster than we can bring people in, especially qualified people. So what do? We get a heartbeat, we throw it in a chair and hope that it'll stay long enough to counter the cost of turnover, which is huge.
Right.
So I definitely see the Career Authority software being able to provide organizations with that how do we translate that vision, mission, values, and roles into behaviors so that we show up consistent with that? Because I think a lot of employees get disenchanted when, our employees are our most valuable resource and they've got a turnover of, 40%. Kind of like counterintuitive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I work with individuals at large, they seek us out, and, they're usually, coming off of a disappointment in terms of feedback from their employer. They're feeling kind of, they're burned out.
Sure.
Those are usually kind of shorter interactions, and, there's less about what can you do to make an impact with your current employer that furthers your development. So we don't get into that, but we get into, how to tell a good opportunity for you from a bad one, and what do you need to work on to differentiate yourself and to be, to be pulled into that better environment. And so that's kind of that line of work. When I work with an organization, it becomes sort of 50-50. It's 50% the individual and sculpting their development plan to who they are, as well as then the impact they can make based on the challenges of business, the goals and priorities. And that's, because, if you do 360 interviews and you have conversations with people for 4 or 5 months, you're going to bring, you're going to have that context of their work and their development collides in a nice way. And the beauty of that is then they start to show a greater impact at work on the things that matter to the employer. And so that is this absolute win-win that, when we get into that. And, I would say, I don't know that we've had any project that hasn't had that sort of, impact back on the workplace. And so we have theories, and we think that, retention, the cost of retention, this is not our theory, but the cost of retention is basically about 1.5 years of somebody's salary, so, it's, by the time you rehire, you have a gap in, somebody leaves, and then you get the productivity.
Yep.
Yeah. So about 1.5 years worth. So we think we can prevent, if not all, most of that, certainly for the 2 years that follow, a interaction with FlightPath Pro. And then the other is engagement, right? Like, and the holy grail is, if you could raise engagement by 10%, how much productivity falls out of that? And I don't know that we absolutely know, but, there is another dimension besides retention. It's productivity.
Right.
And if you can, I've run through some numbers on, the average productivity of a U.S. employee, and if you raise that 2%, what does that equal? And it's a big number. It's nearly as impressive as the retention number. And so if you get both of those working, they're doing more, better work, and they're actually feeling satisfied because they know that it's leading to, they've been given new responsibilities, they're being given training. It's worth it, right? And then they're committing and they're staying until it doesn't make sense. And, I think employers we're not, when I was inside, I'm okay if somebody doesn't spend 20 years, right? But I want to get, 5-10 years, 5 years for sure.
Right.
Because, the first year I'm teaching them, training them. Second year, they're starting to come up with some initiatives, and they're starting to use what they're learning. And, by year 3, they're implementing things, and they're showing initiative, and they're looking around corners and, predicting problems. And then I'm in a sweet spot, and I don't want you to leave then, right?
Right.
Stay a while.
Yeah. And when they're doing those activities, that's engagement. When they're taking the impetus and they're taking the initiative and they're moving. For me, just looking back at my own career, that was the best time of my life. because you feel a higher sense of control as an employee. You feel like you've got support. You know,
Yep.
I was lucky. I had a VP that had my back, and that
Yep.
gave me a great deal of confidence that I never had before. And so, when you get a taste for that,
Yep.
nothing else will do.
Yep.
And so hopefully you're able to stay relevant within the organization for, like you said, a decade or more. I was with the organization for almost 20 years, and I loved every minute of it. So definitely, I see huge value in FlightPath Pro for both sides. For an employee who wants to start out and say, I want a real clear vision of the organization that I'm going to be a good fit in, that matches my values. That's the world to me. And then, I can also see the organizations, because I work with them every day, that are good people. These are good people. Yep. And they just don't have the recipe of engagement, and they need help coaching. I do a lot of coaching. They just need to be seen the path for themselves, for the organization. Because I think that if we get that model right, think of the amount of employees that we can get re-engaged and going home every day fulfilled by the work that they do.
Which, on a macro scale is super important for us, because there are going to be a lot fewer employees, and we've got 4% unemployment. Job. So everybody that wants a job's got one. Now those jobs may not be as desirable as we want, and we may be on our way to the job we really want. But if we can give people the tools and the insight, and then the support, like Dave said, if every manager could ask, if employees were asked privately, do you think your manager has your back? And they said yes. That, so how can they get that? Well, helping employees with their career development through things like FlightPath Pro would be a great way. If I'm an HR person and privately you ask the employees, do they have your best interest at heart? And if they said yes, they're in a tough spot. They're, between management and me, they got to take care of the enterprise. But yes, ultimately they have our best interest at heart.
Right.
HR can foster that with an environment of sculpting roles and succession plans and development and training. And it doesn't have to be, I'm very conscious of cost, right? Because I was on the other side. I even though we, as a company, you have a lot of, profits are impressive and revenues, and it seems like money is never ending. And sometimes it is, but in HR, it often wasn't, right? And so I'm very conscious of, being a better priced, but, actually, I think superior value approach. And the way that we combined the thinking of a coach and automated much of that speeds up the whole process. So you probably take out 2 months of traditional coaching by the time you're trying to understand the current state of a person.
Yeah.
So all that is pretty much done in 3 hours, and you're on to improvement.
But when you think about from a budget standpoint, the cost of not doing it far outweighs the cost of the service that you guys provide.
It does.
Yeah. It's the biggest no-brainer in the world these days.
The opportunity cost or the loss of not doing it is enormous. We kind of get used to this sort of, remember that tunnel I described, right? Well, sometimes in HR we're in the tunnel, right? It's just we're having 20% turnover, and we're just cranking on talent management, and we're looking for creative recruiting techniques, and we're outsourcing search, and we might raise entry level pay, and we're doing a lot,
Yeah.
But ultimately, then we still have folks, and they quickly lose. The organization loses its shine, and then they're not sure if management has their back, and they're not sure why I'm putting up with the slog of the day-to-day work, and what's the reason for our existence. I haven't connected my career. I haven't connected them to the customer. I haven't tried to understand their values and seeing if I could let them flourish in ways that maybe could help the team.
Right.
Absolutely. And so if you don't do any of those things, and you'll spend 80% of your time on replacing people, and your company might actually think you're doing a good job, and they'll be used to the 30% engagement and the low productivity, and they'll still make money, by the way, probably if it's an interesting product or service that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people will retire from only having worked in organizations that are like that. But I wasn't really interested in perpetuating that paradigm. Right. I think work is too sacred. We spend too much time at it, and too many people get sick when it's bad. So that's why I'm trying to put a dent in that. And if anybody wants to partner and go on the journey, you should talk to Dave and I some more, and we'll get at it.
Absolutely. Now I've got on the lower part of the screen all your contact information, and I highly recommend and endorse the Career Authority, the Flight Path Pro product. Brent, we've known each other for a while now. This, you've got the integrity. I would not even think of having anybody that didn't have the highest level of integrity on the insights. And, you've shown that you're very knowledgeable. You're an expert in that area, although you're also very humble most of the time.
Most of the time.
As far as I can experience, you're incredibly humble to the point where, you don't really show off the amount of knowledge you really do have on this, and the experience and the years that you've put in. And I think that people need to know and understand that this is not, a project. It's been an investment of knowledge.
No, I think I safely can say I appreciate those compliments, and I even take humility as a huge compliment, because I think our egos can mess up our leadership, right? And so, but maybe sometimes you're too much on that. But it's a body of work for me. So every once in a while you have to look back and say, well, what am I here on the planet for?
Right.
And it's kind of crazy, but I think in many ways this is one of those things, because I can look back and, in the old days, people would come to my office and it would be full of flip charts with all the parameters that are now baked into Flight Path Pro, by the way. And, they were like, wow, he's really curious. He's asking me questions and nobody else will ask. And they're agnostic to the company. And then he's kind of helping me distill it. And, hey, let's do that.
That's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, absolutely. And, this is your second time, and I hope to have you back because, in the process of doing the tremendous work that you guys do at Career Authority, you run into the most pertinent issues that businesses are facing today. And so I know that we've got another episode in us.
All right.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, maybe, there are other members of Career Authority. Maybe, we share the glory and they get a chance to tell their story. That would be great. It would be awesome if we could get a few people from your team all at the same time. Cool. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Have a great rest of the week. You too. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.